She didn't even look back when she walked out of the hospital room. I remember the exact sound of the door clicking shut. Soft, almost polite, like it didn't understand it had just ended a life. Not hers. Mine. Because there I was, sitting on a stiff plastic chair at 3:17 a.m., holding a newborn who hadn't even opened his eyes yet, while the woman I loved, the woman who promised forever, left without saying goodbye. No argument, no explanation, no note. Just silence, and the echo of footsteps fading down a hospital hallway. 7 years later, I would stand in a crowded courtroom, hear her gasp behind me, and watch her hands start shaking when she realized he was standing at my side. But to understand why she froze that day, you have to understand what it felt like to be abandoned at the exact moment you became a father. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been left when life got hard. One comment stuck with me. It said, "The worst betrayal isn't cheating. It's when someone walks away when you need them most." That line hit like a punch to the chest because that was exactly what happened to me. Her name was Liana, and for 3 years before that night, she was my entire world. We met in the most ordinary way possible, at a grocery store. She was arguing with the self-checkout machine, whisper yelling at it like it had personally offended her. "Why does it keep saying unexpected item in the bagging area?" she snapped. I laughed before I could stop myself. She turned, narrowed her eyes, and said, "If you're going to laugh, you better help." That was Liana, fierce, blunt, and impossible to ignore. I fixed the machine. She thanked me with a crooked smile, and somehow that turned into coffee, then dinners, then staying over, then moving in. It all happened so fast that it felt like a dream. She wasn't perfect. She hated talking about her past. She would change the subject anytime family came up. Sometimes she'd stare into space like she was reliving something painful. But I told myself everyone has scars, and I loved her enough not to push. Looking back now, that silence should have scared me. When she told me she was pregnant, she was shaking. Not from happiness, from fear. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. I thought she meant motherhood. I didn't realize she meant staying. I held her hands and said the words every hopeful man says, "We'll figure it out together." For a moment, she smiled, and I believed that meant everything would be okay. The pregnancy was difficult. She became distant, cold. She stopped laughing. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me with this strange expression, like she was memorizing my face, like someone about to say goodbye. I asked her once, "Are you still happy with me?" She forced a smile. "Of course I am," she said, but her eyes didn't agree. The night she went into labor, it was raining so hard the roads were nearly empty. I drove like a madman, heart racing, terrified and excited at the same time. She didn't scream during contractions. She didn't cry. She just stared out the window, quiet, almost numb. That silence still haunts me, because now I know she had already decided. Our son was born at 2:46 a.m., tiny, perfect. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I felt something shift inside me, something powerful and permanent. I looked at Liana, expecting tears of joy. Instead, she looked like someone trapped, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. "I need some air," she whispered. I thought she just needed a moment. I thought she'd come back. I thought love meant she always would. But minutes turned to an hour, then 2, then 3. A nurse came in, confused. "Where's the mother?" My stomach dropped. I ran into the hallway, called her phone, again, straight to voicemail. Then a security guard approached me. He held something in his hand. He said, "A woman asked me to give you this. It was her ring, the one I gave her when we promised forever. Inside the band, 3 tiny engraved words, 'Don't follow me.'" And that was the moment I realized she hadn't just left the hospital, she had disappeared from our lives completely. But what I didn't know yet was that her leaving wasn't the worst betrayal, not even close, because 7 years later, I would discover the real reason she ran, and it would change everything I thought I knew about her and about my own life. And the truth would begin with a single knock on my door, late one night, from someone who knew her secrets. For the first few days after she disappeared, I didn't sleep. Not really. I just existed in a fog of fluorescent lights, hospital paperwork, and the sound of my son crying in a room that felt far too big for just the two of us. Every time the door opened, my heart would jump. Maybe she came back. Maybe she realized she made a mistake. Maybe she just needed time. But it was never her. It was always a nurse or a doctor or silence. And slowly, painfully, reality settled in. She was gone. Not missing. Not lost. She chose to leave. They asked me questions at the hospital. Did she say anything unusual? Any signs of mental distress? Family history? I didn't have answers, because the truth was, I never really knew her past. I knew her favorite coffee order, her habit of humming when she cooked, her fear of thunderstorms, but I didn't know her family, her childhood, her old friends. Looking back, it's terrifying how easy it is to love someone deeply and still not know who they really are. Bringing my son home alone was the hardest moment of my life. I had imagined this day 1,000 times. Balloons, laughter, pictures, proud smiles. Instead, it was just me, carrying a car seat into a silent apartment that still smelled like her perfume. Her shoes were by the door, her jacket hung on the chair, her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. Every corner whispered her name. I sat on the couch holding my newborn and broke down for the first time. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief. I mean the kind of crying that shakes your entire body, the kind that feels like your chest is collapsing inward. Because I realized something terrifying. I had no idea how to do this alone. The first weeks were survival mode. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights. I learned everything through panic and trial. I once spent 20 minutes trying to figure out why he wouldn't stop crying, only to realize I had warmed the milk too much. Another night, I fell asleep sitting up, only to wake in pure terror thinking I had dropped him. But slowly, something changed. I stopped seeing him as a reminder of abandonment and started seeing him as my reason to keep going. I named him Noah because after everything collapsed, he was my new beginning. People's reactions were brutal. Some were sympathetic, others not so much. "You must have done something," one coworker said bluntly. "No woman leaves a newborn without a reason." That sentence cut deep, because part of me believed it. What if I missed something? What if I failed her? What if she left because of me? For years, that question haunted me. Raising Noah alone reshaped my life completely. I took night shifts so I could care for him during the day. I sold my gaming console, my car, even my watch, the one my father gave me, just to afford childcare when work hours overlapped. There were nights I ate instant noodles so he could have proper baby food. And yet, I never once resented him. Not even when he screamed at 4 a.m. Not even when I missed promotions because I refused overtime. Because every time he looked at me and smiled, I felt like maybe I wasn't as broken as she left me. When Noah turned 3, he asked the question I feared most. "Where is Mommy?" I froze. Every parent prepares for tough questions, but nothing prepares you for that one. I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to poison his heart, so I told him the simplest truth I could. Mommy had to go away. He thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Children accept things adults can't. But later that night, I heard him whisper while holding a stuffed toy, "Please come back, Mommy." That broke something inside me all over again. Years passed. Life slowly found a rhythm. Noah grew into a bright, curious kid. He loved drawing dinosaurs. He laughed loudly. He had her eyes. That was the hardest part. Every time he smiled, I saw her and wondered why she never came back. Then on his 7th birthday, everything changed. We were in the middle of his party, balloons everywhere, kids running around, cake frosting smeared on his face. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful, like maybe the worst was behind us. Then someone knocked on the door. It was late, almost 10 p.m. Everyone paused. I opened it, expecting maybe a neighbor complaining about noise. Instead, a woman stood there, older, nervous, holding a worn leather envelope. She looked at me like she rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. "Are you Liana's husband?" she asked softly. My heart stopped. No one had said her name in years. My voice came out barely a whisper. "Who are you?" Her eyes filled with something heavy, guilt, regret, fear. "I'm her sister," she said. "I've been looking for you for 7 years." The world felt like it tilted under my feet. Sister? Liana told me she had no family. None. Ever. My hands started shaking. "Where is she?" I demanded. Her woman swallowed hard. "That's why I'm here." She slowly handed me the envelope. "It's time you knew the truth." Inside were documents, medical reports, legal papers, and a photograph that made my blood run cold. It showed Liana standing beside 2 men in suits outside a courthouse. She looked terrified, like someone being forced into something she didn't want. I looked back at her sister, my voice trembling. "What is this?" Her answer came out like a confession. "Your wife didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because someone threatened to destroy your life and take your son away before he was even born." My heart slammed against my ribs. Threatened? By who? Why? None of it made sense. But before I could ask more, she said words that would change everything I thought I knew about Liana. "The people who made her leave are the same people who are about to come after you." And in that moment, I realized her disappearance wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning, because someone out there had been watching us for years, waiting, and now they were ready to step into our lives. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The sounds of Noah's birthday party behind me, laughter, music, children shouting, suddenly felt distant, like they belonged to another world. I stared at the woman standing in my doorway. Liana's sister. 7 years. 7 years of silence, and now she was here, telling me my entire life had been built on a lie? My voice came out sharp, almost angry. "Start talking." She stepped inside slowly, like she was afraid the walls themselves might hear her. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Noah, sitting on the floor with cake frosting smeared across his cheek, laughing with friends. She froze. Her lips trembled. "That's him?" she whispered. Her voice cracked. "He looks exactly like her." A strange wave of protectiveness surged inside me. I instinctively stepped slightly in front of Noah. "You don't get to say things like that," I snapped. "Not after 7 years of silence." She nodded, accepting the anger. "You're right," she said quietly. "But please, just listen, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just about Liana." She paused. "It's about you, and why your life has never really been safe." We sat at the kitchen table. I didn't offer her water, didn't offer kindness. All I felt was tension coiled in my chest like a spring ready to snap. She placed the envelope between us. "My name is Mara," she said softly. "Liana is my younger sister." I shook my head immediately. She told me she had no family. Mara let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "That's because she wasn't allowed to have one." Her words felt like puzzle pieces that didn't belong together. "Allowed?" I repeated. Mara nodded slowly. "Our father wasn't just strict," she said. "He was powerful." She hesitated, then said it. "He ran a private financial network, the kind that deals with money powerful people don't want traced." The air in the room felt heavy, illegal, dangerous. My stomach twisted. "You're saying she grew up in some kind of criminal family?" Mara shook her head. "Not exactly criminals." She leaned closer. "Worse. Our father didn't just control money, he controlled people. Politicians, businessmen, judges, anyone who owed him favors." My chest tightened. "And when Liana turned 18, her voice dropped to a whisper, he promised her to someone." I blinked. "Promised?" Mara nodded. "An arranged marriage, not for love, for power, to merge influence, to secure loyalty." My hands clenched into fists. "That's insane," I said. "She could have refused." Mara's eyes filled with sadness. "She did. And that's when everything went wrong." According to Mara, Liana ran away at 19, changed cities, changed her name, cut off every contact. She thought she had escaped. For years, she lived quietly, carefully, until she met me. Mara looked at me with painful honesty. "You were never supposed to happen," she said. "Not because you weren't good enough, but because loving you put her back on their radar." My mind reeled. "So when she got pregnant," I whispered. Mara nodded. "They found her." The room felt suddenly too small. "Who?" I demanded. "Her father's network," Mara replied. "They had been searching for her for years. The pregnancy exposed her location." A chill ran down my spine. Why would they care so much? She ran away. She didn't betray them. Mara's expression hardened. She did worse. She refused to obey. In their world, that's unforgivable. My heart pounded. "So what happened?" Mara swallowed. "They gave her a choice." My stomach dropped. Come back and marry the man chosen for her, or watch them destroy everything she loved. Her voice broke. "That meant you and your unborn child." Suddenly, everything clicked. Her fear, her distance, her hollow eyes during pregnancy. She wasn't scared of motherhood. She was terrified of losing us. I felt a wave of nausea. "So she left to protect us?" Mara nodded slowly. "Yes. She thought if she disappeared completely, they would stop watching you. They only wanted her, not you." My hands trembled. All these years, I believed she abandoned us, believed she chose to walk away. But now it sounded like she sacrificed everything. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Because if you knew, you would have tried to stop her, and that would have gotten you killed." The weight of that truth crushed me. For 7 years, I carried anger, bitterness, pain, and all along, she might have been trying to save us. I covered my face with my hands. A deep, raw grief rose inside me. "Is she alive?" I whispered. Mara hesitated. Too long. My heart started racing. "Tell me." Her answer came slowly. "Yes, but she isn't free." I looked up sharply. What does that mean? Mara's voice dropped. She was forced into the marriage. She lives under constant surveillance. She can't contact anyone from her past, not even me until recently. Why now? What changed? Mara's face turned pale. They're losing power, she said quietly. The network is collapsing, and when powerful people start losing control, they become dangerous. A cold fear crawled through me. What does that have to do with me? Mara met my eyes directly. Because now they see you as leverage. My blood ran cold. They know about Noah. They know where we live, and they believe. She swallowed hard. You still matter to Liana. My chair scraped loudly as I stood up. No, I said immediately. No, no, no. They can't just walk into our lives like this. Mara's voice was urgent. They already have. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. A photo taken from across the street. It showed me and Noah walking into our apartment building, date stamped 2 days ago. The room spun. Someone had been watching us, tracking us, waiting. All these years we weren't invisible. We were being observed. And now they were making their move. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Mara's eyes filled with fear. Because Liana finally managed to send a message. A message? I demanded. Mara nodded. 3 words. I leaned forward, barely breathing. What did she say? Mara whispered, "Get them out." And at that exact moment, there was a loud knock at the front door. Not friendly, not casual, heavy, deliberate, like someone who already knew we were inside. Mara's face turned white. "That's them," she whispered. And in that instant, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a story from the past anymore. This was happening right now, at my door. The knock came again, louder this time. 3 heavy pounds against the door, slow, deliberate, confident. The kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. It announces control. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Noah was still in the living room, laughing with his friends, completely unaware that something dangerous might be standing just inches away on the other side of that door. Mara grabbed my wrist. "Don't open it," she whispered urgently. Her voice shook, but her eyes were sharp, like someone who had lived her entire life expecting moments like this. They never knock unless they already know what they want. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Then what do I do?" I whispered back. Mara leaned closer. "You act normal, because if they think you're scared, they push harder." Another knock, this time followed by a calm, polite male voice. "Mr. Carter, we know you're home." The sound of my name made my stomach twist. They weren't guessing. They were certain. I forced myself to breathe slowly. My hands felt cold as I walked toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. I glanced back at Noah. He was smiling, holding a balloon sword, completely lost in his birthday world. A surge of protective instinct burned through me. Whatever was happening, I couldn't let it reach him. I opened the door halfway. 2 men stood there, both wearing dark suits, clean, calm, professional, the kind of people who looked more like lawyers than threats. But their eyes were empty. One of them smiled politely. "Good evening," he said smoothly. "We apologize for the late visit." My voice came out tight. "What do you want?" The man reached into his jacket slowly, not aggressively, but deliberately. He pulled out a thin envelope, held it up. "We're here to deliver a message," he said, "from someone you care about." My heart skipped. Liana. It had to be. I hesitated for a split second, then took the envelope. The paper felt heavy in my hands, like it carried something dangerous. "Please read it," the man said calmly. "We'll wait." His tone wasn't threatening, but it wasn't optional either. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and the moment I saw the handwriting, my chest tightened painfully. It was hers. I would recognize those curves and loops anywhere. My hands began to shake as I read. "I'm sorry. I never stopped loving you. They are watching. Do not fight them. If you want Noah to stay safe, do exactly what they ask." My vision blurred. 7 years. 7 years of silence, and the first words I finally received from her were filled with fear. I clenched the letter. "What do they want?" I asked, my voice rough. The man smiled slightly. "A conversation." He reached into his pocket again and handed me a business card. No name, no company, just an address and a time. Tomorrow, noon. "You will come alone," he said calmly. "No police, no questions, just listen." A cold anger rose inside me. "You expect me to just walk into whatever this is?" I snapped. The man's smile didn't fade. "You will," he said softly, "because you love your son." Before I could respond, he added something that made my blood freeze. "And because we know his school schedule." Time stopped. The world narrowed to a single terrifying truth. They knew everything. Where we lived, where Noah studied, our routines. Our lives weren't private. They were mapped, controlled, exposed. The men turned to leave, but before stepping away, the second one spoke for the first time. His voice was low, almost bored. "7 years ago, she chose to protect you. Don't make her sacrifice meaningless." Then they walked away calmly. No threats shouted, no violence, just quiet, absolute control. And somehow, that was far more terrifying. I shut the door slowly. My legs felt weak. Mara was already standing, her face pale. "They found you faster than I thought," she whispered. I handed her the letter silently. As she read it, tears filled her eyes. "She's still trying to protect you," she said softly. I sank into a chair. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. What did they want from me? Why now? What could I possibly have that mattered to people like them? Mara answered the question before I even asked. "Leverage," she said quietly. "They don't want you. They want control over her." The realization hit hard. I wasn't the target. I was the pressure point. They believed that if they threatened me, threatened Noah, Liana would obey anything. A deep, helpless anger burned in my chest. "They took her life," I said bitterly, "and now they want to use mine too." Mara nodded slowly. "That's how they operate." I looked toward the living room again. Noah ran toward me suddenly, smiling. "Dad, look at my sword." He swung a balloon in the air proudly. In that moment, everything became clear. I would do anything to keep him safe. Anything, even if it meant stepping into something dangerous. That night, after everyone left and Noah fell asleep, I sat alone in the dark, the letter in my hands, reading it over and over, trying to feel something beyond fear. And then I noticed something I hadn't before. At the bottom corner of the page, barely visible, was a tiny mark, a symbol, 3 small dots forming a triangle. My heart started pounding because I'd seen that symbol before, years ago, on something she tried to hide, something I never noticed. And suddenly, I realized her message wasn't just a warning. It was a clue, a secret, a way to fight back. And at that moment, I understood something that changed everything. Liana didn't want me to obey. She wanted me to be smart, because hidden inside that letter was the key to exposing the people who had controlled her life for years. But before I could even begin to figure it out, My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered slowly, and a cold voice said just one sentence. "If you don't come tomorrow, your son won't make it to his next birthday." And in that instant, I realized I wasn't just walking into a meeting, I was walking into a trap. Sleep that night was impossible. Every shadow in the apartment seemed to stretch longer than it should. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Noah slept soundly in his room, oblivious to the storm closing in around us. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter and the symbol before me, staring at them like they held the answers to a riddle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. Mara sat across from me, her fingers tracing the edges of her coffee cup nervously. She hadn't said a word for hours, as if she too was waiting for the right moment to speak. Finally, she broke the silence. "They've been doing this for years," she whispered, watching her, watching anyone she cares about. "They leave a trail, subtle at first, but if you're paying attention," she gestured to the symbol on the letter, "it's a pattern, and patterns tell a story." I leaned closer, squinting at the 3 dots forming a triangle. Something clicked in my mind. This isn't just a mark," I said slowly. "It's a location." Mara's eyes widened. "You think she wants you to follow it?" I nodded. "She doesn't want me to follow blindly. She wants me to find the truth, and I have to do it before tomorrow." I spent hours cross-referencing every document, every detail Mara had given me, every scrap of information about Liana's past. It was exhausting, confusing, and terrifying. Every clue pointed to the same people with enough influence to ruin lives without leaving a trace. And yet, somewhere in that chaos, I began to see the threads connecting Liana's disappearance to the threat hanging over Noah. Finally, I understood. The envelope, the symbol, the meeting tomorrow, it wasn't just a threat. It was a test of courage, a test of intelligence, and if I failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Morning came too soon. Noah's laughter as he ran to the kitchen with sticky hands felt like a dagger. My son was my anchor, but also my vulnerability. I couldn't let them take him, not now, not ever. Mara and I devised a plan. "Whatever happens," she said firmly, "you don't go alone mentally. Keep your head. They want you to panic. Don't give them that power." I nodded, though the weight of it pressed down on me like a physical force. We drove separately. Mara said she had connections to watch the perimeter, to alert me if anyone followed. I didn't care how far-fetched it sounded. I needed every edge I could get. The address on the card was a sleek office building downtown, modern glass and steel, almost innocuous, but I could feel the menace radiating off it like heat from a fire. I parked 2 blocks away, pretending to tie my shoelace, and watched. The lobby was empty except for a single security desk. I gave the receptionist a calm smile and said, "I have a meeting with Mr. Harlow." She raised an eyebrow but nodded, pressing a button under her desk. Moments later, the elevator doors opened. I stepped in. The ride up was agonizing. Numbers ticked slowly, 4, 5, 6, 7, until finally the elevator stopped at the top floor. Doors opened. I walked into a room that looked more like a gallery than an office. Minimalist furniture, expensive art, and light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. And there she was, Liana. 7 years, 7 long years of absence, and there she was, standing behind a glass table, her reflection fractured across the surface. She froze when she saw me. Her hands trembled, her eyes widened. I could see the faintest flicker of fear and relief. "Michael," she whispered, her voice breaking. I took a cautious step forward. "Liana, it's really you." She nodded but didn't speak. Instead, she gestured to a chair opposite her. "Sit, please." I obeyed, but every instinct in my body screamed danger. Then a door behind her opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped in. One of them smiled, cold and controlled. "Welcome, Mr. Carter. We've been expecting you." Liana's hand shook as she slid a small envelope across the table. "Open it," she said softly, "before they speak." I hesitated, then tore it open. Inside was a photograph, a man I didn't recognize, standing behind her in an alley years ago, holding what looked like a ledger, and scribbled beneath in her familiar handwriting, "He knows everything. Trust no one." I looked up at her, confusion and panic flooding my chest. "They've been controlling her life," I said quietly. "All these years?" She nodded. "They've been watching everyone close to me. They've manipulated, threatened, silenced, but they didn't anticipate you." I swallowed hard. "Me?" "They thought leaving you and Noah would be enough, but you've survived, you've adapted, and now," her voice grew intense, "now it's time for you to fight." Suddenly, the door slammed open. The 2 men I had seen in my apartment were here too. "This is your chance to cooperate," the taller one said, his voice slicing through the tension like a knife. Liana froze. I realized then what she had feared all along, not leaving me alone, but the possibility that I might walk into their trap unprepared. I had one option: stay calm, stay smart, and find the leverage. I remembered the symbol, the triangle. I remembered the photograph in her letter. I remembered every subtle hint she had left me over the years. Everything pointed to one conclusion: they underestimated me. I leaned forward, letting my voice drop. "I'm listening, but I'm not afraid." The room went silent. Even Liana looked at me, startled. The man in the suit smiled faintly, intrigued. "Not afraid?" "No," I said, "because if you want me to act blindly, you've already lost." Something shifted in the room. The control they thought they had faltered. Liana's eyes glistened like she hadn't dared to hope in years. And at that moment, I realized the fight wasn't just about her or even me. It was about Noah. It was about freedom. It was about taking back what was stolen. The tallest man leaned back, studying me. "You have courage, I'll give you that, but courage alone doesn't win." I met his gaze steadily. "I don't have to win alone." Liana's breath caught. She took a step closer. Suddenly, a sound from the hallway, a subtle click, made all of us turn. Mara. She had managed to get inside unnoticed, and in that instant, the room shifted again. Now we weren't alone. Now they didn't have control. The tension was unbearable. Every second felt like eternity, and yet the fight had only just begun. Because in that moment, I understood one terrifying truth. The people who thought they had power over Liana, over me, over Noah, had no idea who they were dealing with. The room was a powder keg, and every second that passed felt like the fuse was getting shorter. Mara moved to stand beside me, her presence steadying, giving me courage I didn't know I had left. Liana hovered near the glass table, still frozen, still afraid, but her eyes now held a flicker of hope, a spark I hadn't seen in years. The 2 men in suits, calm and controlled, had underestimated something critical. They didn't know that after 7 years of fear, pain, and survival, I wasn't the same man who had sat alone in a hospital room, abandoned by the woman I loved. I was stronger, smarter, determined. I glanced at the triangle symbol in the letter again. It wasn't just a mark. It was a map, a key to their weakness. And I realized the truth Liana had been trying to show me all along. "They think they control us," I said, my voice low but firm. "But everything you've done to hide, to protect, it's left cracks, and I see them now." The taller man's expression flickered, just a fraction. but it was enough to know he realized I was no longer intimidated. Liana whispered from behind me, almost too quietly to hear. "Be careful." I nodded without looking back. "I will, but I need you to trust me now. No more hiding." Her eyes filled with tears. After 7 years, I finally saw her face without fear covering it completely. She nodded. I turned my attention back to the men. "We know what you want," I said, "and I will do what I have to. But know this. Any move against my son, and it won't end the way you think." The shorter man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that says someone believes they have the upper hand. But I noticed something subtle, a shift in his posture, a twitch in his jaw. They weren't as confident as they had appeared. They knew I was dangerous. Then Mara spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You've been monitoring us for 7 years. That's enough. Every step you've taken to control her, every threat, it's all traceable. We know what you're capable of, and we know how to stop it." The taller man's eyes narrowed. "And you think you can?" I stepped closer, feeling the surge of anger and purpose. "I don't think. I know." Liana's breath hitched. For the first time, I could see relief mixing with fear in her expression. She had always believed in my love and protection. She had never doubted my determination. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a flash drive, the one Mara had given me earlier. "Everything you've done, every threat, every shadow move, is documented here. Every contact, every transfer, every hidden ledger. This isn't just a warning, it's proof." The men's eyes widened, but they didn't move. Control was slipping from their hands. "You think this changes anything?" the taller one said, his voice icy. I smiled faintly. "It does. Because I'm not alone anymore." Mara stepped forward. "And I'm not either." Liana finally moved beside me, placing her hand on my arm. "We're together," she said softly. "All of us." For the first time in years, the men hesitated. They had spent a lifetime controlling, manipulating, and intimidating. But they hadn't accounted for loyalty, courage, and family. The shorter man whispered something under his breath to the taller one. Their calm demeanor cracked for just a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. "You've underestimated us," I said. "You didn't see the years of pain turning into strategy. You didn't see fear turning into strength. You didn't see love turning into armor." The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. I could feel the tension building to a breaking point. Then, almost as if rehearsed, Liana handed me another small envelope. "This is what I've been hiding," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "Everything they've used to control me, their secrets, their operations, their names, it's all here." I took it with shaking hands, opening it carefully. Inside were files, photographs, and documents that revealed a network of corruption I had never imagined. Everything Liana had endured was only the tip of the iceberg. Mara leaned in, her voice tight. "If we act carefully, we can take them down, expose them, free her, and protect Noah." The two men in suits spoke together almost simultaneously, their control faltering. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," the taller one said. "Even if you expose us, there are others, powerful people, dangerous people. This doesn't end here." I smiled faintly, but it wasn't the smile of a man who underestimated danger. It was the smile of someone who had endured unimaginable pain and learned to survive. "Maybe," I said, "but we don't have to survive alone anymore. And neither do you." Then something happened that shocked everyone in the room. A phone on the table vibrated. I picked it up instinctively. A message flashed on the screen. It was Liana's handwriting. "It's time. Do not fail us." I looked up. Her eyes met mine. "I'm ready," I said. And in that moment, everything changed. The men stepped back, reassessing,
realizing the control they thought they had was slipping. And I knew then that the battle wasn't just for Liana or me. It was for Noah. It was for our future. The next hours were a blur of strategy, confrontation, and careful maneuvers. Every piece of information from Liana and Mara became a weapon. Every document, every photograph, every ledger was a key to dismantling the network that had haunted us for years. The men realized they were losing their advantage. They tried threats, intimidation, even subtle manipulation. But they underestimated the power of truth and the strength of those who refused to back down for the ones they love. By the time the sun began to rise, a new understanding had emerged. The balance of power had shifted. I looked at Liana, her hand in mine. "We're going to fix this," I said. Her eyes shone with tears. "Together," she whispered. Mara nodded beside us, her own resolve clear. "We finally have a chance to end this." And in that moment, I realized something I had almost forgotten after 7 years of fear, betrayal, and survival. Love isn't just about what you endure. It's about what you fight for. And I was ready to fight. But just as relief began to settle, a faint noise echoed from the hallway, a sound so subtle it could have been mistaken for wind. All three of us froze, because we knew, deep down, that the battle wasn't over. Not yet. And whoever was behind the network was already planning their next move.
The faint sound in the hallway grew louder, a deliberate, slow shuffle that made every nerve in my body scream. Mara reached for my arm. "They've planned for every escape, every move you could make. They've been waiting for this." I nodded, my jaw tight. 7 years of fear, of absence, of betrayal. All of it had led to this moment. I could feel it in my bones. Every second mattered. Every choice could mean life or death. Liana stepped closer, her hand on my shoulder. "We can do this together," she whispered. "We have to." I swallowed hard and scanned the room. The documents, the ledgers, the photographs. They were more than evidence. They were weapons. And now we had to use them. The door at the far end of the hallway swung open slowly. 2 men in black suits appeared, faces masked by shadows. They moved silently, trained, precise, like predators circling their prey. But this time, we were ready. Mara pressed a button on a small device she had hidden in her coat. Within seconds, the elevators stopped functioning. The building's internal alarms flickered, and the lights dimmed. Panic was a tool, and we wielded it perfectly. The intruders froze for a fraction of a second, enough for me to act. I grabbed a chair and threw it toward the nearest man. The crash of metal against tile made him stumble, giving Liana a chance to shove the second man into a wall. Chaos erupted. For years, we had trained ourselves to survive silently, to endure threats and manipulate danger into survival. Now, all that preparation was coming to life. Mara moved like a shadow, throwing punches and expertly disarming our attackers with swift, calculated strikes. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I dodged a blow and retaliated with all my strength, hitting the nearest man square in the chest and sending him sprawling. Liana screamed, but not in fear, in anger, in defiance. She had been silenced for years, but now she was roaring. Then, a sound I will never forget echoed through the room, a soft click from the far corner. One of the men had a gun. Time slowed. I froze, heart hammering. Noah flashed in my mind, the tiny, innocent boy I had been fighting for, and I realized something crucial. I didn't have to win with brute force. I had to win with strategy. I grabbed the flash drive from the table and held it up. "You want control. You want leverage," I shouted. "It's all here. Every secret, every illegal transaction, every threat you've made against my family. I can release it to the authorities, the media, the world. Every move you've made is traceable, and if you fire that weapon, everything comes down.
The taller man hesitated, the gun trembling slightly in his hands. His calm composure cracked. They weren't used to losing. They weren't used to people who fought back with intelligence instead of fear. Mara seized the moment. She lunged, knocking the gun aside and pinning the man against the wall. Liana grabbed the second attacker and disarmed him as well. It was over in seconds, but the tension remained, thick, suffocating, dangerous. Breathing heavily, I looked at Liana, at Mara, at the chaos we had just navigated. "This isn't just survival," I said, my voice shaking from adrenaline. "This is justice." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted you to fight like this," she whispered. "I just wanted safety. For you, for Noah." I shook my head. "No, you wanted me to be smart, to be strong. You taught me how to survive without even realizing it. And now, we finish this, together." I grabbed the envelope containing Liana's hidden documents. Every piece of evidence, every proof of their corruption and manipulation was there. It was time to end it. Mara dialed a number she had kept secret. "Authorities are on their way. This is the proof they need," she said. I glanced at the two men, who now realized the tables had turned completely. Their network, their power, even their carefully constructed intimidation, shattered. "You thought you could control her, control me, control our son," I said, voice rising. "But you didn't count on love, you didn't count on loyalty, and you didn't count on the truth coming out." A tense silence fell across the room. The taller man tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. The shorter one clenched his fists, realizing that nothing he had done for years could undo the power of exposure. And then, the sirens, the sound of approaching justice. Liana finally exhaled, relief washing over her like a tidal wave. "They're coming," I said, "and this time, you're free." Her hand found mine, trembling, shaking, but warm. "I've been waiting 7 years for this moment," she whispered. No words could capture the intensity of that instant, the fear, the relief, the anger, and the love that had carried us through years of silence and pain. The authorities arrived, and within minutes, the men were taken into custody. Mara handed the documents to the agents, every detail meticulously explained, every threat documented. I stood there, watching them lead the men away, feeling the weight of 7 years lift from my shoulders. And then, I heard it, the first laugh of Noah ringing in my ears. I realized he had been sleeping in a nearby room, safe, unaware of the danger we had just faced. I ran to him, scooping him up into my arms, holding him tight. "You're safe," I whispered. "We're all safe now." Liana came beside us, wrapping her arms around both of us. "7 years," she said softly. "I thought I'd lost you forever." "You never lost us," I replied, voice cracking. "You just had to survive. And now, we survive together." The night outside the city lights was calm, the storm of danger behind us. And as we sat together, exhausted but victorious, I realized something profound. Love is not just about presence. It's about sacrifice. It's about courage. And most importantly, it's about never giving up, even when everything seems lost. But even in that victory, a faint chill remained. Because power, control, and fear are never fully defeated. Someone else, somewhere, had been watching all along. And though we had won this battle, the war for freedom, trust, and safety was only beginning.
The morning after the confrontation, the city felt quieter, softer, as if the world itself had exhaled along with us. Sunlight spilled across the apartment floor, bouncing off the walls where shadows of yesterday still lingered faintly. But today, for the first time in 7 years, the weight of fear had lifted, just enough to take a breath without trembling. Noah sat on the floor with his favorite toy cars, oblivious to the storm that had raged outside these walls. He laughed, loud and innocent, and I realized that laughter was the sound of freedom. It was proof that the sacrifices we had endured, the dangers we had faced, and the pain we had carried had all been worth it. Liana and I sat on the couch, our hands intertwined. We didn't speak immediately. Words weren't necessary. 7 years had been filled with absence, fear, and silent heartbreak. Sometimes silence itself is the only language that truly conveys what has been endured. She finally broke it, her voice soft, fragile, yet filled with relief. "I thought I'd lost you forever," she said, her eyes glistening. "You never lost us," I whispered back, feeling the tears sting my own eyes. "We were waiting, and so were you." It was true. All the planning, all the danger, all the secrets, they had tested us. They had tried to break us, but they underestimated what love forged in adversity could withstand. In the days that followed, Mara helped us untangle the web of threats and surveillance that had haunted our lives. Every document, every ledger, every hidden contract became evidence in the hands of authorities. The network of power and intimidation that had controlled Liana for years began to crumble, brick by brick. And yet, there was something important we learned. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about reclaiming life, reclaiming choice, reclaiming freedom. Liana could finally breathe again. She could finally live for herself, not under the constant shadow of fear. And Noah, he could grow up in a home where his father and mother were present, united and strong. I remember walking Noah to the park one morning, sunlight glinting off the swings, laughter of children echoing across the playground. He looked up at me, his eyes bright and full of trust. "Dad," he asked, his small hand holding mine tightly, "did Mommy always love me, even when she was gone?" I stopped, kneeling so our eyes met. The weight of those years hung in the air. "Yes, Noah," I said softly. "She loved you more than anything in the world. Every choice she made, every step she took, it was to protect you, to keep you safe." He smiled, satisfied, and ran off to the slide, unaware of the battles that had been fought to keep him alive and free. For Liana and I, the healing process wasn't instant. Trust, once fractured, takes time to rebuild. We spent hours talking, revisiting the past, confronting the shadows that had haunted us. We shared stories of fear and survival, of secrets kept and sacrifices made. And through it all, one truth became crystal clear. Love alone doesn't conquer everything. Courage, resilience, and the willingness to fight for what matters do. We also learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the mundane, everyday acts that once felt ordinary, but now shone with meaning. Holding Noah's hand as he fell asleep, sharing a coffee without discussing danger, watching the sunset together without fear of what lurked in the shadows. It was in these moments that the true depth of freedom revealed itself. The experience changed me profoundly. I had been a man defined by betrayal, by loss, by absence, but I emerged from it with clarity. Life is unpredictable, cruel, and often unjust, but it is also capable of resilience, love, and redemption. Liana taught me the most valuable lesson. Sacrifice is not weakness. Courage is not absence of fear. And love, true love, can be the most powerful weapon against oppression, control, and injustice. Years later, when Noah's old enough to understand, I'll tell him this story, not to scare him, but to teach him strength, to show him that even in the darkest times, hope is possible, that people who love you will sometimes act in ways that seem distant, but are rooted in protection and care. I'll tell him that courage comes in many forms, standing up against injustice, protecting the innocent, fighting even when the odds are insurmountable. And I'll tell him about his mother, the woman who risked everything to save us, even if it meant disappearing from our lives. Liana and I rebuilt our lives slowly but deliberately. We moved to a quieter neighborhood, a place far from the shadows of the past. Every day was a step toward healing, toward trust, toward life. We learned to laugh freely again, to love openly again, and cherish each moment without fear. Noah thrived, curious, intelligent, fearless, the best parts of both of us wrapped into one small human. And as I watched him grow, I felt a sense of purpose I had never known before. And yet, I will never forget the nights in the hospital, the hollow feeling of abandonment, the letters filled with coded warnings. I will never forget the fear that threatened to steal our lives. Because it is in remembering the darkest moments that we recognize the strength we never knew we had. It is in surviving the impossible that we learn what truly matters. Love, family, courage, and the unyielding belief in justice. 7 years of silence, fear, and uncertainty had brought us here, to safety, to family, to truth. We were scarred, yes, but those scars were not weaknesses. They were reminders. Reminders of what we endured, what we fought for, and what we would protect at all costs. And as I hold Liana's hand and watch Noah play in the sunlight, I understand something I will carry for the rest of my life. The past may shape you, threaten you, and haunt you,
but it does not define you. You define yourself by how you rise, by how you protect those you love, by how you choose courage over fear. I don't know what the future holds. There may be challenges ahead, shadows lurking in unexpected corners. But I do know this. We face them together. Love endured, courage prevailed, justice was served, and a family, once fractured and threatened, was whole again. And in that, there is peace. Sometimes late at night, I sit by Noah's bed and watch him sleep. I think about how close we came to losing everything. I think about Liana's sacrifice, her courage, her love, and I promise myself, no matter what comes next, I will never let fear control our lives again. Because now, we are more than survivors. We are a family, and nothing, no threat, no betrayal, no shadow from the past, can ever take that away.